Hey friends, welcome back to another adult faith formation video. For those of you who are new here, my name is Becca and it is good to be with you. This is a series where Pastor Micah or myself, we take one of the readings from the upcoming week and we dwell in it. Sometimes that means that there's a clear message, or maybe there are notes and words that matter. And sometimes it is just confusing and we sit in a lot of questions together. Today's text options were from 1 Corinthians and Isaiah. And I gotta tell you, I am never gonna give up an opportunity to talk about Isaiah because prophecy is so cool. And like prophets in the Old Testament have a lot of value to multiple different faith systems, you know? So a reading from Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 through 4. There will be no gloom for those who are in anguish. In the former time, the Lord brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the latter time, he will make glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who have walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nation, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest. As people exult when dividing plunder, for the yoke of their burden, and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. So I want to give you some history or some context to Isaiah because I feel like that's important. I feel like we can lose pieces of importance when we just snip it the way we do. So there are three movements in Isaiah. First Isaiah, second Isaiah, and third Isaiah. Isaiah is a collection of oracles, so like prophecies, things that are being told to people. So the themes in first Isaiah are worship and power. Its central tenets is the exalted view of God, how great and powerful, exercising dominion of Jerusalem. And so Jerusalem will never be utterly destroyed is what they're hearing, and King David's dynasty will never completely fall. So there's hope. They speak a lot of hope in first Isaiah. I should say that they all speak hope, but the level of difficulty in having hope changes in each movement. So the second movement, or second Isaiah, is those themes are exile and doubt. Second Isaiah seeks to assure the exiles both that the Lord still has compassion for them and that there is compassion for Jerusalem. Despite this triumph of Babylon, the Lord is Lord of heaven and of history. So hard hope. In 2nd Isaiah, they are being exiled. They are moving from Jerusalem. They are no longer to inhabit this land for who knows how long when they're leaving. And 3rd Isaiah is hardship and return. It almost is like expectation, like they have different expectations. They expect this glorious return and restoration, and instead they encounter immense hardships. As despair quickened, the returnees, the Israelites, begged God for a miraculous resolution to their unhappy situation. But by the end of the book, we hear God's sovereignty and compassion for Israel and for them. So more hard hope. And sprinkled throughout the book of Isaiah is hope of a Messiah. Now, we as Christians believe that Messiah, that hope that they have, is Jesus. But there are other faith traditions that read Isaiah and still have hope for a Messiah, meaning they don't believe Jesus is that Messiah. So Isaiah is a really powerful book because it is one of the ways in which we hold together brothers and sisters of or siblings in the Jewish community, because of Jewish faith, because they read Isaiah also and have that hope too. So anyhow, more hard hope. And our reading today comes from the first movement of Isaiah. So going backwards, thinking about worship and power and hope, not the hard hope, just just like this light hope that, it's going to get better, but we still live in our homes kind of hope. And worship here is that in the tragedy and hardship that is the leadership of King Hezekiah, there is still hope and there is still worship of God, knowing that God is bigger than King Hezekiah. Kings in this time wanted to be worshiped. So the thing that's combated is, do we worship God or do we worship our king? And that's a hard tension, right? Is our safety versus our faith. And that can be really challenging. So there's hope in faith, right? But that doesn't assure safety for the Israelites. And in power, there are two, like I said, this power dynamic of worshiping God and worshiping the king. And in this, we're talking about the power of God, right? The hope that lives in the power of God. And then lastly, that theme of hope. There is hope that God won't fail them, that God will be triumphant in the end. I feel hope in this text in words like joy and light, rejoice, increased, shined, multiplied, and glorious. Those words live in this scripture, and this text is promise. So all those words are prophecy, they're hopeful, and they're promised. So what's hard about that is it might not necessarily be immediate for them, and it wasn't, right? It may not even be in their lifetimes, meaning people had babies in exile and different generations returned to their land in that last movement. But God is faithful. God is faithful to God's people. So to live with a worshiping posture towards God the way that they did, even when they messed up or even when they doubted, that worshiping posture, knowing it wasn't going to get better, was a practice of faith. It was a labor of love. So often we read Isaiah or any other places and we're like, oh God, they mess up all the time. But it's so human. The humanity that is shown or on display in Isaiah is so true and it's so evident and something we can connect to, right? We mess up and God is faithful to us. And so the Israelites tried to live with this worshiping posture towards God. So how are we, I'm going to leave you with some questions. How are we living with a worshiping posture towards God? I like to call a practice of faith similarly to what people call a labor of love. A practice of faith, meaning I have to practice my faith and I have to work through this hard thing, a labor of love, right? So maybe something you're going through right now is a practice of faith. And how do you see this practice of faith changing your posture towards God? Do you think that maybe you are changing as you are going through it? Do you think your posture has changed as you're going through it? Or do you find yourself sitting in the same position you were in before and in the same place as your relationship with God as you were before? Friends, my prayers are with you this week. The scripture text comes from Isaiah 9, verses 1 through 4. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, I'd love to hear it. You can leave it in the comments or on the Facebook or wherever you are receiving this. We'd love to hear from you. Till next time, see ya.